Now as we get started here, let's do a quick course overview so that you'll know what to anticipate and you'll kind of know what the roadmap is ahead, where we're headed and what we're going to talk about in this course. Since this is a quick start, we're going to cover a lot of information really quickly here, and I'm going to touch on the basics and really kind of get you jump started on virtual computing. So we're going to start off talking about the basics of virtual computing, what it is, then we'll talk about some pros and cons, what it will do for you, what it won't do for you. Big question, exactly what virtual machine software can I get, should I use, and I'm going to point you to the three most popular free ones. Notice that free word in there. Then I'm going to step you through the installation, and I'm going to work with VirtualBox, Sun Microsystems VirtualBox in this course. All the others are very similar. Whatever you see here, you will know what to do with the other ones. You may have to just look at the documentation to see the odd little nuances that might be different from one version to the other. Then I'm going to show you how to install a guest operating system from a DVD. Then I'll show you how to do the same thing from an ISO image. And then I'll actually show you how to use the virtual machine that we created from that ISO image. And then we'll talk about guest editions, what they do, how they make the whole thing look and feel a whole lot better. And at about this point in the course, you will really start to be getting pretty comfortable with the idea of virtual computing, and you're going to like what you see. Then we'll look at some of the virtual machine settings, things like memory, where exactly the hard disk is located, those sorts of things. Then we'll talk about accessing files on the host. Some of these products call them shared folders, but when I'm in the virtual machine, what if I want to access data that's stored on the host file out there? I'll show you how to do that. USB support, something that's really, really cool. The ability to read off of USB thumb drives and use USB devices in these virtual machines is pretty cool. And then I'll actually close it out by showing you some of the nerd tools and just give you a real brief introduction into some of the command prompt tools that you can use with VirtualBox. And then the other products out there have command prompt tools as well. So what I want to do is, using VirtualBox, give you a good intro into the world of virtual machines, virtual computing, and kind of turn you loose, kind of wake you up to this. You're going to see a lot of things that you'll like, and you're going to get a lot of really cool ideas for how to change some of the ways that you learn and test and work with a lot of different pieces of technology in computing. So let's get started. Well, let's start the course with a very simple question, and that is, what is virtual computing? Now, whether you're new to this or you've been around a while, it will help to go over some of these things. Then I'm going to show you a live example here before we leave this video. Virtual computing, and you will also hear this term interchanged with words like virtual machines and so forth. This is simply a software implementation of a computer operating system environment. And by the way, this thing runs in a separate window on the operating system that's called the host. And so what you've really got here, notice the second bullet, multiple operating systems that run simultaneously on a single host system. And notice each one is in its own kind of, that should be in quotes maybe, sandbox. So I can have a host system, and then I can open in a separate window, just like any other Windows application, another operating system. Now you will hear it called a lot of things interchangeably. I'll be just as guilty as the next guy as we go through this quick start of calling these things virtual computers, virtual computing, virtual machines. And if you look in documentation and a lot of things out there on the internet, they'll be called VMs. There's a lot of different words for them. But anytime you hear the word virtual, you'll know that we're talking about these kind of environments. Now, what exactly does this look like? I'll show it to you on a slide, on an animation, then we'll look at one running. Notice I've got a super wide monitor here, and notice this is Windows Home Server, this snapshot is. And what I can do with virtual computing is I can create virtual machines. Now the first one is I create a virtual environment. That one is running Windows 7. This runs in a window right there on the desktop, and then I can open another one that's running Windows Server 2008 in this window. And then if I have enough memory and enough resources, then I can run a Linux machine in another window. Now these are windows just like any application in the Windows environment. I can minimize them. I can make them full screen. But notice I'm running Windows Home Server here as the host, and then I have 3 guest operating systems running in that host environment. And so I have Windows 7, Windows Server 2008, and Linux. Now, the only catch, and we'll go through this a lot as we go through the quick start here, I have to have enough memory and enough disk space on the host system to share with all of these systems. Well, let's go out and take a look at one of these live right now so you can see what it really looks like if you've never seen one of these before. Now you'll notice here that I've hopped out to my desktop, and I've already started a virtual machine, and what I will do here is simply click on this, and I will open my Windows Server 2008. Now, in my environment right here, if I pull this down, this desktop that you're looking at, notice right here is Windows Vista. And then I have loaded, I'm using Sun's VirtualBox virtual machine environment. I have loaded Windows Server. I've installed Windows Server 2008. Now notice it's in a window. I can move it around. And just for your information, my entire environment here, the desktop, is at 1024 by 768 resolution, and this is an 800 by 600 box. Now what's interesting about this is within this window, notice I can come down here and click, and I can bring up the start button on this, and I can work in this environment. Just that's Windows Server that's running. I can go out and look at my desktop. I can go into the C drive and I can start to look around. Let me back out here. Let me go back down to start. You notice administrative tools right here. I can go out and grab, for example, Server Manager. And this is a fully functioning Windows Server 2008 environment. It's running as a guest system in this particular window on my Vista desktop, okay, or in my Vista operating system. Now Vista is the host operating system. Vista is sharing RAM and disk space and processor time and so forth in here. Notice I'm just getting a little thing going on here with Windows Server. And so I have a running environment that I can use. And then when I'm completed with this, I can either shut it down or I can just power it off, and it will go away. And so notice I'll just choose shutdown here, and I'll just type something in here so that it'll work so you can see it. And then this will shut this Windows Server down. Again, I'm running Windows Server. I can grab these things and load them, but I just wanted you to see what it looks like. Now, as we go through the quick start here, I'm going to actually tell you a few things about these, the advantages of using these virtual machines, what kind of virtual machine software to use, and how to set them up, and all sorts of things. First of all, I'm going to start off with a course disclaimer about these things, okay? So join me in the course disclaimer video. As we get started, I want to first give you a real quick course disclaimer, because there are some aspects of virtual machines and virtual computing that you need to understand, and I want to make sure that I don't step on some toes right out of the gate here. And notice what I've put up here on the screen. Virtualization software is personal. This is almost like religion and politics, with an awful lot of people who have been exposed to virtual machines. And I want to make sure that I don't get a lot of emails from people saying, hey, did you know about this? Did you know about that? Well, virtual PC will do this. Well, VirtualBox will do that. Familiarization seems to be the key factor that causes people to gravitate toward one particular virtualization product. And I'm going to discuss a number of them as we go through the quick start here. But your personal experience with these may cause adjustments in the way you feel about one or the other. Okay, now there are folks out there that if you mention virtualization and then don't run VMware, they will almost drag you out in the parking lot and seriously abuse you. And I understand their loyalty to VMware. It's an incredible, excellent product. But one thing you're going to see as we go through the course here, I'm going to tell you about some things and show you some things, but trust me, by the time you get this finished product, there will probably be some changes. So what I'm going to show you in this course is what virtual machines are, what virtual computing is, and I'm going to give you a rough guideline on how to use it. Now, 90% of the way all of these things work and the way you operate them is identical. So what you learn here, you'll be able to apply to any of them. Now, the next big disclaimer is my opinion on what you see in here is subject to change over time. There have been times that I favored one virtualization product over another one. An update came out on something else. Somebody told me about it. I went over there and tried it. I'm like, oh yeah, I like this a whole lot better. And this is going to happen to you as well. So be very careful about the fights that you pick over virtualization. I can't say this strongly enough. Experiment with different products. Do not pick a virtualization product based on your favorite technology company. If you're a Microsoft shaped head, don't go with Microsoft's virtual PC or Windows Virtual PC just because Microsoft did it. Don't shun away from the Sun Microsystems VirtualBox just because you're a Microsoft person and all that. Try all the different ones. Different ones have different strengths. And this is huge. Read the documentation on the particular virtual software that you're running. Because I know a lot of people, especially with VirtualBox, who have made some serious mistakes and just really wasted an entire afternoon because they didn't read the documentation when it came to making a copy of a virtual machine, that sort of thing. So most all those products have excellent documentation. Just read through it. Anytime you want to do anything like access a host system file, share a file, clone a virtual hard disk, and anything like that, just go out there and read the documentation. So that's the course disclaimer. Don't take anything here as absolute end-all truth when it comes to virtualization, especially as it reflects on a particular piece of software. Again, there's a lot of competition out there in this market, and these different manufacturers update and change this stuff very rapidly, especially the open source stuff. And so we see some cool stuff happening back and forth between versions. Just kind of keep that in mind as you go through here. And don't get mad at me and don't send me emails telling me how goofy it is that I used one particular product over another one, because I would probably agree with you by the time you send the email and it gets here. There's the disclaimer.